and then it was an emergency. I'm sure anybody who's here who's managing more than a few WordPress sites can sympathize, but that's basically where StagingPilot was born. It started as just a suite of scripts and things that we were running internally to try to streamline that process, and it's just been refined and refined over time until it became solid enough as a product that we started selling it and trying to help other agency owners and people maintaining lots of sites. So there's obviously a lot of tools out there that help you update sites, and we're aware of them and we're using them. But one of the problems we found is we really want to flip that problem around. There's a lot of tools to help you click update across a bunch of sites. You can go into Manage WP or Infinite WP or any of these other tools, and you can click update on 100 sites all at once. But that doesn't really solve the problem. You can't just blindly do that and then flip off your computer and go away for the weekend. You have to make sure that those sites are still working and you haven't taken them down or screwed them up. And so you have to test to make sure that everything's working. And we really want to kind of flip that model. So it's the same way that, we have our phones. Most normal people at least are not going into their phone every night and looking at all the new app updates that are available and reading the change logs and clicking update and then opening those apps and making sure they're still working. You just are always running the latest version and you expect it to work. And that's what we want the WordPress experience to be. The expectation is that all my sites that are on StagingPilot right now are up to date. They look the same as they always have, and they're working the same that they always have. And if there's something that's not working, then I can get notified and deal with it. But that was really how we designed the product, is so that your sites are really on autopilot. So there's a little dashboard, and you can kind of see a quick summary of updates and get reports, and many of the things you'd expect in a management tool. So you can see the activity and a list of all your sites, and generate reports for clients. So this is the process that StagingPilot uses to apply updates. So this is for WordPress core updates, plugin updates, theme updates. We kind of designed the process around if someone was paying us 6 figures a year to update one WordPress site, what is the best practices? What is the best way that we would do it? And this is what people talk about. What you're supposed to do, for every update is clone it over to a staging environment. Do your updates there, make sure that everything is still working, and then go back and apply those updates to the live site. But it's pretty cumbersome, especially if you're doing that across tens or hundreds of sites, or if you're doing that with really large sites and databases. That can take time, and it just, in reality, doesn't get done every time because it's too time intensive for humans. But this is how our process is built, and the robots are doing all of these steps every time with every update. So the big benefit is that you're getting lots of test coverage, lots of things are being tested during this testing phase. But if something fails, it's not the situation where you've just clicked update in Infinite WP and now you have a problem on your hands. You need to roll back to a backup, or you need to quickly, feverishly fix the problem. You would get a test result from StagingPilot, but since all of this happens in an isolated environment, your live site isn't affected yet. So here's an example of a failed test that you would get. So if WooCommerce, this was a WooCommerce update, we actually caught a number of issues with where some styling broke. So StagingPilot can pick up a really small change visually. So it's not, obviously it will detect a white screen, and, that will be a 99% different, visual comparison, but it can pick up really small things, which is sometimes more dangerous. The small things are the things that slip through even when we're being diligent and doing this process manually. It's easy to let those things slip through because the page, if you saw the after screenshot where those menus lost their styling, it still looks okay. It still looks like the site is working. It doesn't look totally broken. The site isn't white screened. But obviously it's something you want to be aware of. And it's easier to fix when you know about it ahead of time, and you don't want to be finding out about those things from your client. You want to be ahead of that, of course.
So what about on pages where it's different? So like there's dynamic content, or a different ad pops up, or the call to action is different, and then your screenshot compares, like it thinks it's broken, but it's really just the two different pages, something like scrolled through, or like a testimonial rolled through, or something like that.
Sure. So yeah, that's another thing that we've spent a lot of time on, is reducing false positives, because there are kind of really rudimentary tools that you can take screenshots and do comparisons, but if you're getting a false positive alert every single day and nothing's actually wrong, like that's not a very valuable tool either, because now you're just looking at test results all day and then overriding them. So we actually do a number of things to handle these cases. So like a good example is if you have an auto-playing video on your homepage, if the screenshot is taken even, a half second different, it's going to show like a 30% difference on the page because the video's, in a different frame. So we actually have a number of normalization steps that we do before we take the screenshot. So if you have an auto-playing video, we actually pause it and rewind it to the first frame and then take the screenshot. The same thing with sliders and like advertisements. We can basically normalize those areas so that the screenshots are really consistent. So even if you've got, an auto-playing video and you have little things that fade in as you scroll down your screen and everything, we can normalize all those things so that you can actually get like, a 0% difference. And it really makes it a more quality notification. When you get a notification, something's legitimately wrong. Now, there are still pages that have truly random content, like it pulls a random testimonial on your homepage every time it loads. And so that's not something that can really be normalized, but we can set individual thresholds. You have the ability to adjust the threshold here for any page. So you could say, like, my homepage is allowed to be 8% different or 10% different, which is still going to catch, any major error that happens on that page. And if you've got, 8 other screenshots that are all, set at 0%, like you're definitely going to catch any kind of global issue that comes through. So when StagingPilot sets up for the first time, it will actually load every page like multiple times in a row. So it would load your homepage like 5 times in a row and see, without changing any code, without updating anything, is it changing every single time? And then it will set that threshold for you automatically. But then you can always go in and tweak it at a later point.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So here's just another example of a failure that we can detect with StagingPilot. Like there can be just small visual changes in a form, like there was an update to the form plugin and it adjusted these labels to be in a different position. So like anytime you get a failure notification like this, you can quickly see which plugins were updated. You can see what pages broke, by how much. You can see the before and after. So it's really helpful to like assign this to a developer. This is exactly what a developer wants to fix a problem, rather than, well, it was working 2 months ago and the client just let us know that this looks broken. Like you can actually narrow it down to a specific, plugin and page, and it's really easy to work on. And from this point, like you get the opportunity to do a few different things. Like you could say, I don't care about this visual change, like just let it through. So you can say, thanks for letting me know, just approve it and this can go live. Or, you could say, just stop updating this plugin for now, keep updating everything else. And a developer will, when they have time, let's schedule it for next week, have our developer go on and, update this plugin in a staging site or do whatever code changes need to be done. And then StagingPilot can start updating it again. Okay, so that's our screenshot test, which is kind of replicating, reloading the page and making sure everything's still working, and provides a good amount of coverage because it's doing way more checking of things visually than most people have time to do, or even small things they may not notice. But what's really powerful is that we have browser testing built into the platform. So you actually want to test the functionality to make sure things are still working, that customers are able to do the things they're supposed to do on your site. So if you have WooCommerce, for example, you obviously want people to buy your stuff and pay you and check out. So we have an automatic test you can enable to test the WooCommerce checkout. So we actually load up a browser and we go to a product page and we add it to the cart. And then we go through the checkout process and actually fill in dummy field values, and we put a unique number in this like testing number. And then we actually go through and submit it and then log into the admin and make sure that that unique number is there. So we're actually making sure that it got all the way through the order process and is actually in the database. Now, we don't actually test the payment gateway. I mean, one, because like the Stripe payment gateway is in use on hundreds of thousands of sites, and that's probably not the piece that's going to break. What's probably more likely is one of your 50 plugins that's installed is going to throw one JavaScript error, which then breaks the little checkout process, and someone won't get through. So we actually substitute in a cache gateway just so that we can do that checkout process, and we're making sure that all the WordPress stuff is working and none of the updates broke that checkout flow. But we're not like hitting your payment gateway. You don't have to do refunds or anything like that. And so we have some other tests. So like if you have Lifter LMS is like an online learning platform, the same kind of thing. Everybody wants to do the same thing. They want to make sure their students can sign up. They want to make sure that existing students can log in. They want to make sure that their protected content is protected. They want to make sure that students can go in and take quizzes. And so the same kind of process. We actually can fire up and do a number of functionality tests. So we're replicating not only the visual inspection that someone would do, but actually the steps of testing the critical functionality to make sure everything is still working. So you get this audit trail, and you can kind of see that all this testing is being done, and you're going to get flagged if there's any kind of failure that you can go look at.
Adam had a question about testing for PHP versions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we actually support the same process that we're applying. Obviously, the before and after event could kind of be anything, right? The default here is we update a plugin and we want to see before the update and after the update. But also PHP versions is something we support. So we have a test that can be fired now where you can say, run all of this, but don't change any plugins, just change from whatever version of PHP you're on to like PHP 7.2. And it would run the same visual tests and any functional browser tests that you have attached as well.
What about any other type of like custom testing and for people that have like really unique, just activities on their site that you might not have, just like already custom built? How does that work?
Yeah, so if you have a highly technical team who can write tests can be attached to your site. We can also write custom tests for you, which is basically instead we hop on a 10-minute call and you tell us what kind of critical functionality you need to test, or here's this custom feature we built for this site, or this custom post type we built, and we can write a test that basically like goes into the admin, creates a new post type, publishes it, goes to the front end and make sure that it looks right and that data got there. So we can write those tests. If it's just like one test for one random site, sometimes we'll just help you get that done. If it's like a huge thing where you have hundreds of sites and you need a custom test on each of those, we can do those at a custom cost. But if you have someone on your team who's technical, we can point you at the documentation. You can do it. That's how you could really do anything you could type on a keyboard or click with your mouse in a browser. We can replicate with an automated test. And we're trying to cover the kind of common cases that we're seeing with WooCommerce or Lifter LMS or Gravity Forms. Everybody kind of wants the same thing, and we can write these special tests that actually get built on the fly. So like with WooCommerce, every WooCommerce install is a little different. Your cart page might be named something different, but we can actually figure those things out. So right before we run the test, we build a test on the fly for you. So from your end, all you do is check a box that says, yes, I want to test WooCommerce checkout, or I want to test login with MemberPress, or I want to test, the submission of my forms with Gravity Forms. And then we can do, like, the platform builds all the rest of that on the fly, but we can do custom stuff as well.
Very cool. So automated, like, batch testing, what about the, like, testing for updates or finding, like, within plugins and things like that?
So sorry, could you say that again? So
I was like, so we looked at, like, how it tests your site content and things like that, but what about, and a little bit on some of the plugins, how do you, it's one thing to have a whole bunch of sites, but then having a whole bunch of plugins and other things on your site as well. How does that, can you talk about, because I know that you have, like, another component to this.
Oh yeah,
to do the plugin testing.
Yeah, the troubleshooting stuff. So actually, I guess, so basically all that process that we've outlined runs, like, by default, you would just set your updates to run every week, and it would just update all the plugins, all the themes that are available, and it would highlight any of those issues. Are you talking about the troubleshooting part?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was, but John asked about an overview of setup. So if you want, that's your next slide anyway. I was getting eager, so
okay. Yeah,
do that really quick.
Okay, we'll do this, and then we can jump back to it. So yeah, setup is super easy. So you would just take your Pressable site. Essentially, all we need is the SFTP credentials for that, and then StagingPilot can set up from the rest of that. So this video is also on the blog post, so you can go through that if you need it for reference later. The blog post on the Pressable blog. But basically, you would come into your StagingPilot account. You would go to add a new site. You would just put in the URL here. And then you're going to go select Pressable as your hosting company and put in the SFTP credentials here. And we're working with the Pressable team to start connecting with their new API, which we're super excited about, so that we will be able to just have it even less clicks, where you can just approve the site and all the credentials and access will go across automatically. Okay, oh yeah, and there's, like, basically once you put those credentials in, StagingPilot has actually scanned the navigation of my site to make some recommendations on pages that you might want to have. So it just had, like, the sample page and the Hello World blog post. But from here, you can customize and add any other pages you'd want, or any landing pages, things that aren't in the navigation, custom post type, single pages that you would want to have. And you're basically, from that point, then you're just saying you're ready to add the site. And then it can take a few seconds here, but we're installing a little helper plugin to communicate with the site to make sure that we see what sites are, or what plugins are installed on there. And you can set any custom rules. So, like, if you had WooCommerce and you've done a bunch of custom work on WooCommerce and you don't want to, I don't know, let's say you don't want to update it ever, like, through automation, you can just say, like, only do minor bug fix releases, or just never update this plugin ever, because I'm always going to do this manually. So you can set custom rules, like, depending on your site. And then when you're done with that, you just finish the setup. So pretty quick. I mean, you can import a site in a couple minutes, and then it kicks off this process, which, especially the first time, it sets up the testing environment. It does a bunch of additional verifications and making sure everything is still, is all set up properly before we start running any updates. So you would basically just leave this and go add the new site. So you could add, 10 sites in 30 minutes, and then let it do its thing for a while, and then it would be running your updates automatically. So,
does that answer your question, John? I think maybe. All right, cool. There he goes. He's unmuted. John, did that answer your question? You have
Yeah, I
any
shadowed it in the question and answer, but no, it doesn't really answer it. My question was more about, does this, I assume, create the install on like a third-party server, not on the actual Pressable server?
Correct. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Because my main concern was just how similar that setup was compared to the Pressable setup, I guess.
Yeah, it is similar. We match the PHP version. We match,
okay.
Which is the most critical piece. We match MySQL and PHP version, and it is just on like a temporary Amazon Web Services instance, and we don't want that. We don't want to be hitting the load of your production site. We don't want to be using up your number of installs, or it's just a temporary instance that we spin up and run. But by matching those two things, that basically makes it pretty consistent.
All right. All right. What's that?
All right.
All right. Ready to go.
Okay. So yes, we did work something up with Pressable. So if you want to try StagingPilot, you can see how quickly you can add sites. It's very easy to get set up and running, and you can actually run it for 90 days for free. So especially if you want around this Gutenberg update and you need a bunch of stuff that you need to test out, you could use it for that time. Hopefully, obviously, we hope you stay and love it, but you could use that. So I think the link is, Michelle sent out the link, and it's also in the blog post, but it's stagingpilot.com/pressable. Now, for the downsell, to talk about what Michelle was talking about, is we also have a free plugin on WordPress.org, which is related to all this. We have a plugin to help you troubleshoot those plugin conflicts. So when you get that horrible situation where you have to disable all of your plugins and then enable them one by one to find what the problem is, we actually built a product for that that's free that will help you troubleshoot any issues. And if you have it installed before your site gets white screened, it can even help you recover from a white screened site. So here I have just like a example site where I actually put a little fatal error into a plugin. So we could demonstrate this, and you can actually navigate straight to this, and it will run outside of WordPress. So even if WordPress is white screened, you can still troubleshoot this problem. So you can log in, and Detective Autobot, Otto is our resident robot at StagingPilot as well, of course. He's going to help you troubleshoot this issue. So it makes it really simple. You can mark any required plugins. Like if you use advanced custom fields and your whole site will not run, and if that's not enabled, you can choose any plugins that are required at a bare minimum just to keep your site from white screening. And then we're going to basically disable every plugin except that required one and just see, hey, did your site come back? And we can say, yes, it's fixed. And so from there, it starts enabling different sets of plugins. And all you have to do is say, it's fixed or it's broken. And by answering those simple questions, he's going to basically track down which is the problematic plugin in this instance. So because it's doing it not one at a time, but in groups of, it basically cuts down in half every time, and enables half the plugins that it still suspects, you can actually get through this really quickly. Even if you have 100 active plugins, 10 yes or no questions, you can have your culprit, and you can see that it's very fast compared to doing it manually and re-enabling things. So here's just a demo where I'm slicing through 30 plugins, and now it's cleared 29 of them, and we're down to one of 2 plugins remaining as the problem. And say it's broken here, and then it shows you that it found its culprit plugin, and from right there you can actually deactivate that plugin and jump back to your site, and it's back online.
Very cool. Yes, I think that this is really cool. I think it's like a fun little game for support to play because we have customers that exceed their how many plugins is recommended quota.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really hard to find what the exact conflict is between these two different things. So this definitely helps. Like you can just clone your site, go into your Pressable dashboard, clone a site over, install this plugin, and start troubleshooting, or leave it installed on your live site. And then if it ever got white screened, you can get out of that very quickly.
Very cool. Excellent. Are there any other questions? We're like 5 minutes over our 30 minutes. I know we got a little bit of a late start. I was feeling chatty today. If there are any questions you guys want to ping them in here, looks like we have one from John. Are there backups on the staging environment so they can, or to be able to manually revert back to changes, or is it possible to give the client access to the staging environment of a particular install?
Right. So StagingPilot is kind of meant to automate updates and test them, but it's not really meant to be a specific staging environment where work is done, because at any point we could destroy that whole site or roll it back. And if we're running these tests, it gets kind of wiped out, and then we sync it up with your production site because we want to make sure that when we apply that update that it's the exact same as your live site. So it's not really an area where a client would be doing work or testing out different plugins or trying out different content, because it could be wiped out at any time. So for that, I think cloning the site in the Pressable dashboard and using that as kind of a working area is separate from our process, which is totally kind of disposable because we're only using it for testing.
Cool. Any other questions? If not, obviously, you guys can always follow up with either Pressable or StagingPilot directly for further information. I want to thank everyone for coming on today, and hopefully you learned something really useful and can be excited about this tool. I think that it's really cool, and I'm not very technically proficient, so hopefully those of you who are even more excited than I am. So thank you very much, Nathan, for taking the time today to run through this. I really appreciate it. And I know that we're excited to continue to work with you to make sure that our products become more seamlessly integrated as we continue to offer cool things to our customers. Aaron says things, Birgit says things, Antonio, everybody's pretty happy, seems like. Cool. So if anything else, we'll hopefully start doing webinars like this a little bit more often with partners and helping people learn about all the cool things happening. So, but until then, be sure to tweet about it and share the love. Nathan just wrote a really cool guest blog for Pressable. You guys can engage there as well if you want to share the cool things that are happening here. So, all right. Very cool.
Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Okay.
Bye.